Welcome. Today we're undertaking a deep dive into a collection of intensely personal and frankly deeply unsettling accounts. These aren't just news clippings. These are firsthand stories. Close calls, hidden dangers, profound psychological violations shared by the people who actually lived through them.
Yeah.
And the core realization that seems to weave through all these sources is pretty chilling, actually. True danger, it often isn't, the obvious threat.
Right. Not the stranger in the dark alley stereotype.
Exactly. It's something integrated into your daily life. It hides behind a trusted face, maybe within the walls of your own home, or sometimes even inside the systems that are supposed to protect you.
And what's fascinating, I think, from an analytical perspective, is the psychological impact of these hidden threats. These narratives, they really force us, and you, the listener, to confront our capacity, or perhaps more often, our inability to act on really deep red flags. We seem to instinctively want to rationalize away the horrific, don't we? Especially when it involves someone close.
Yeah, you want to find another explanation?
Precisely. So our mission today is to unpack these accounts, look past the initial shock, maybe understand the patterns of misplaced trust, institutional failure sometimes, and the immense lasting scars these moments leave behind.
Absolutely. And our deep dive begins with maybe the most disturbing theme here, the erosion of trust in someone you consider a friend. We're going to unpack the story of a German immigrant. She moved to a small Texas town, about 177,000 people. Set up a wildlife rescue.
Okay.
And over several years, she forged what seemed like a really genuine, close friendship with a local man named Richard.
And Richard was, from her account, exactly the kind of person you'd think you could rely on in that kind of setting, right? A hunter, helpful, polite.
Yes, respectful to her and her husband.
Yeah.
You just sort of fit into their lives seamlessly. The kind of friend you feel you can truly count on.
Okay. Solid foundation, seemingly.
Until about 5 years into this relationship, then that facade just shattered.
Completely.
Richard was apparently under the influence of psychedelic mushrooms one night.
Oh, what?
Yeah. And he launches into this horrible racist rant. But amidst that tirade, he confessed. He described going into the city, picking up black prostitutes, taking them home on 2 separate occasions.
Oh, wow.
Subjecting them to, quote, terrible things, and then taking their lives. He even detailed how he would burn their bodies and scatter the remains for the animals on his property.
The level of detail provided in the source material is just unnerving. This wasn't some vague boast. It sounds like a specific, almost operational narrative.
It does.
Which brings up a really important psychological question. Why did the narrator and her husband just dismiss this immediately?
That's the absolute crux of it, isn't it? They're faced with this unthinkable information about someone they trust implicitly.
Right.
And they rationalized it instantly. They told themselves, oh, he's just high on shrooms. He just watched a horror movie. He made it up in a drug state.
Right.
They chose to believe him when he eventually just laughed it off.
That sounds like classic cognitive dissonance at work.
Yeah.
It's psychologically, easier, cheaper maybe, to believe your friend is lying or delusional than to accept that a person you love and trust, someone you rely on, could be a serial predator. That proximity to evil, it almost demands denial.
Because accepting it means...
Accepting his confession means recognizing they'd been inviting a potential killer into their home for 5 years. That realization, it's paralyzing.
And the cost of that paralysis, or maybe denial, it became tragically clear about 5 years later. Richard marries a woman named Tammy. The narrator described her as warm, sweet, caring. But soon after the wedding, Richard's, his true colors took hold, as the source puts it. The abuse started controlling, isolating.
Even escalated.
Yeah, eventually confining Tammy to their trailer against her will.
And the cruelty, it just escalated to a terrifying degree. Tammy gets diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, and Richard refused to pay for her chemotherapy, effectively forbade her from seeking treatment. This really connects back to the source's later description of his grandiose narcissistic personality.
How so?
Well, confessing to murder could be seen as a sort of narcissistic performance of power, right? But the extreme control over his wife's medical care, that's the practical application of that power. It's total domination over her life and ultimately her death.
Chilling. And the ultimate red flag, the one that just couldn't be rationalized away, came immediately after this. Richard messages the narrator the very next morning. Says Tammy was dead from cancer.
Just like that.
Just like that. No autopsy performed. She was cremated within 48 hours.
Wow. 48 hours.
Yeah. The narrator felt the red flags were absolutely undeniable at this point, but fear of confronting him, fear of the consequences, it kept her silent.
And this fear, whether it's fear of the person or fear of the system or just the consequences of getting involved, that's another massive theme here, isn't it?
Definitely. It actually took an unrelated tragedy years later for the full truth, or what seems like the truth, to surface. The story ends in December 2021. Richard and his son, Rich, they're killed by Richard's father in a murder-suicide, apparently over an inheritance dispute.
So it's only after Richard is dead.
Only after he's dead, yeah, that the narrator contacts his ex-wife.
Yeah.
And she confirms the abuse, provides more details on his personality, and crucially, the ex-wife confirmed Richard had confessed to 3 murders, one more than he told the narrator.
One more.
And she also confirmed the specific details about the methods, burning the body, scattering the remains.
So the ex-wife, feeling safe now, presumably, she contacts the sheriff's office about the alleged prostitute murders and Tammy's very suspicious death.
She does, and here's where the system failure becomes, well, horrifyingly clear.
What happened?
They dismissed the claims immediately. The police response, according to the source, was cold, dismissive. They cited no missing persons reports that matched the timeline. And regarding Tammy's swift cremation, they basically said there was nothing that can be done or proven. Their final word. There just wasn't enough public interest to pursue a cold case against a man who was already dead.
Not enough public interest. Wow. So the takeaway from this segment is pretty sobering for you, the listener. The core question just hangs there. Was the narrator's close friend of over 20 years an actual serial killer?
Whose crimes were just shrugged off.
Shrugged off, first by those closest to him, out of denial maybe, and then by law enforcement. That denial mechanism, both personal and institutional, seems to have been stronger than the evidence of atrocity itself.
That denial mechanism is powerful, especially with someone you trust. But okay, if trusting a friend is hard, what about the place where we feel absolutely guaranteed sanctuary? Our own home.
Right.
Let's pivot now from that personal betrayal to physical violation. We've got 2 accounts of home intrusion that just fundamentally shattered that concept of security. First, we have the account of a tenant. They're cleaning out a rental house, right?
Yeah.
Sorting through a kitchen cabinet near the sink, and they find this small white lever, kind of hidden.
A lever in a cabinet.
Yeah. Pulls the lever, reveals a trap door. And this is where the sort of structural violation begins. Yeah. Inside, there was an extremely narrow hallway leading to a crawl space.
Okay.
And in that space, food, several blankets, clear signs that someone had been actively living inside the walls.
Living in the walls.
Completely unbeknownst to the tenant, who apparently traveled a lot for work.
That discovery itself is just horrifying. It's that insidious terror, isn't it? Realizing your sanctuary was never actually private. It was shared.
Shared without your knowledge.
Oh.
But the real, visceral panic came the next day. The tenant goes back, opens the trap door again.
Oh, no.
And sees a movement inside, sees something move. And before they can even process it, a person, the hidden occupant, slams the door shut from the inside.
Oh, my God. Slammed it shut from inside the wall.
Yeah. That sudden physical realization, that moment of direct contact almost with the hidden stranger. That's the ultimate violation, surely.
The physical proximity, knowing they were actively there, occupying your most private space.
Yeah.
That changes everything. How you view your home, your safety, forever.
Absolutely. Now, contrast that with the second story. This one is about an attempted intrusion, but it really focuses on external awareness and maybe luck.
Okay.
This takes place on the East Coast. A young woman, Anastasia, she's home alone. Her 76-year-old parrot, which apparently has distinct calls for alarm or intrigue.
A guard parrot.
It starts reacting wildly, so she checks her camera view and sees a middle-aged white man, gray pullover. He wasn't trying to be subtle. He was pressed right up against the locked sliding glass door, hands and face flat against the glass, grinning.
Grinning. Oh, that's terrifying. The audacity.
Right, and the tension here just skyrockets because she immediately realizes her critical mistake. She'd left the front door unlocked after taking out the trash early.
Oh no, the classic mistake. You get distracted for a second.
Exactly. And the man, he stops pressing against the glass door.
Yep.
And transitions to this slow and intentionally creepy tapping on her window, clearly establishing, I'm here, I see you, I want in.
So what happened? What saved her?
It wasn't the lock on the sliding door, obviously. It was pure external intervention. Her neighbors pregnant wife happened to be outside on her deck at 1 a.m. because she felt nauseous.
Just random chance.
Complete random chance. But her vantage point allowed her to see this unfamiliar man approaching Anastasia's front door. She woke her husband, he yelled, and the man just fled.
Wow. So what's fascinating there is the contrast. In the first case, the physical structure, the house itself, was breached by a hidden occupant.
Right, the safety mechanism failed from the inside.
Whereas in the second case, the physical structures failed, the unlocked door. But a completely random external element, the neighbor's illness, acted as the savior.
Yeah.
These stories really highlight the fundamental fragility of our perceived security, don't they?
Yeah.
You rely on your instincts, you rely on locks and doors, but sometimes it just comes down to sheer luck. Or a vigilant parrot.
So, okay, we've covered horror caused by trusted individuals, by hidden criminals. But sometimes the greatest fear doesn't come from a person with malicious intent. Sometimes it comes from a terrifying mechanism of the state.
Institutional fear.
Exactly. Our final deep dive looks at the slow, drawn-out nightmare faced by parents who are accused of harming their own child.
Okay, this sounds tough.
It starts pretty innocuously. A trip to the hospital. A couple takes their 2-year-old daughter in for just a simple tummy ache.
Okay, standard parent stuff.
Yeah, but after hours of waiting, noticing kind of strange behavior from the nurses, the girlfriend gets called into a private room. And she's told they are under immediate suspicion. The child had been found to have a broken rib.
A broken rib, out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. And they were suspected of either accidentally or worse, purposefully harming her. Social services arrived almost immediately.
Wow. The fallout from that must be instantaneous.
Yeah.
And paralyzing.
Totally. The daughter is placed in foster care right away. The parents are under criminal investigation. And the terror shifts from these external threats we've talked about to this awful internal breakdown of trust.
How so?
Because the injury was estimated to be about 2 weeks old.
So not immediate.
No, which meant everyone who had been around the child in those 2 weeks became a potential suspect, including the grandparents.
Oh, that's brutal. It creates this massive wave of paranoia, I imagine.
Exactly. The source says the parents struggled to eat, to sleep. The suspicion meant they couldn't trust their own memories, let alone their family members.
This sounds like what some might call epistemological terror. The state basically declares that the core unit of their safety, their own family, is potentially dangerous. They're forced to actively search for a monster within their own support system, all based on preliminary, maybe incomplete medical information.
And the strain, it just reached this awful peak during a supervised visit. The girlfriend's mother, who had already taken the investigation really badly, insisted on being there.
Okay.
And during the visit, she starts grilling the couple, asking inappropriate questions about who they thought was guilty. And then right there in front of the social worker, she just states, in these situations, it's usually the father, directly accusing the narrator.
Oh my goodness, in front of the social worker. That's the ultimate secondary trauma, isn't it?
He was furious, shocked, had to physically leave the room just to keep his composure.
Systemic suspicion didn't just isolate the couple from their child, it actually weaponized their own family against them. That accusation, delivered in a moment of extreme vulnerability, it just shows how easily the pressure from an investigation can destroy crucial family bonds.
So where did this all end up? What does it all mean? Well, months later, an orthopedic surgeon was finally consulted, a specialist, and he concludes the daughter had an undiagnosed, extremely rare bone condition. It made her ribs brittle enough to snap under sustained pressure like being picked up awkwardly. That wouldn't harm other children at all.
A rare medical condition, not abuse.
Not abuse. The case was dropped immediately.
The resolution, while obviously welcome, it doesn't just undo the damage, does it? This narrative powerfully illustrates a potential systemic failure of maybe initial differential diagnosis. A broken rib is immediately translated into malicious harm, leading to this drastic intervention.
Right.
And that systemic suspicion, even when it's ultimately resolved, even with an apology from the social worker, which the SWAS mentions, it can irrevocably destroy trust, family relationships, mental health, all over an unforeseeable, rare medical condition.
So these accounts we've discussed.
Yeah.
From the deep denial about a friend's dark past to the raw fear of a hidden intruder and the absolute horror of fighting the system that's supposed to help, they all seem to circle back to this terrifying realization that the danger we face is often deeply integrated into our daily lives. It's hidden in plain sight. And it's incredibly difficult to confront, whether that's because of our own emotional denial or systemic inertia.
And if we try to connect this to the bigger picture, the consistent theme across all three stories really is that psychological hurdle, the difficulty of accepting that something truly horrific might be happening right next to you right now. The most terrifying monsters, maybe they aren't the distant threats we imagine. Maybe they're the anomalies close by, the trusted friend acting strangely, the unexplained noise in the crawl space, the injury that doesn't make sense, that we convince ourselves aren't real.
Or the ones we just assume the system will handle.
Exactly. Only to find the system sometimes creates its own kind of horror.
Well, thank you for joining us for this this deep dive into these really disturbing narratives. We hope these insights offer you some context, perhaps, and maybe a powerful reminder that sometimes the only real protection we have is trusting those gut instincts, even when the reality they suggest seems just too horrific to believe.